To sum it up, it is basically a book about the world's toughest hobo searching through post-World War II America for the mythological rock candy mountain. And
so pretty much a genre that's been played out.
Pretty tired,
yeah.
But he somehow makes it fresh. So
What's up, nerds? Welcome to another episode of the Nerds You're Looking For podcast, a weekly nerd culture podcast. Discusses the culture through various segments. My name, of course, is Patrick Kuhn, alongside my co-host, as always, that Tyler Hunt. How's it going, man?
It's going well, man. How are you?
I'm all right. This is going to be kind of an interesting episode. For those that don't know, we're currently at Indie PopCon right now. We are literally sitting in our hotel room. It's like 10:30 at night. We're cuddled up close recording. We used to do it this way, but we have not done it in a long time, recording like this, so it's kind of awkward.
Yeah, now I remember why we stopped doing it like this, because our boners were getting in the way of recording the podcast. So
yeah, we were just constantly sword fighting the entire time.
No, but this is like the Nerds You're Looking For after dark, so it's a new setting, and it feels, I don't know, original again, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's going to be a little awkward, but I think we'll get through it. Hopefully, it is kind of later in the night, like we said, so hopefully we don't have too much background noise as far as like people in the hallway or whatnot, but I doubt any of that's going to get picked up, but it's going to be interesting, for sure.
Yeah, and so for those of you wondering, we are doing another Indie PopCon episode. It's just going to be released, I believe, in 2 weeks is what we have it scheduled for. So
spoiler alert, we have Spider-Man Homecoming this episode, and then, of course, War for the Planet of the Apes comes out next week, and we're not bumping that for Indie PopCon as much as we love Indie PopCon.
Yeah, no.
We're reviewing that next week as well. So
priorities.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So we're going to release Indie PopCon episode in 2 weeks.
Yep. So with that, you ready to get started?
Yeah. So if this is your first episode, you picked a kind of a weird episode to start on. But we start out each episode by kind of just checking in with each other. We call it What We're Into. So what are you into this week?
So for those of you that are regular listeners, you know that I have been pretty busy with work this last month, and that continued this week. And I didn't really have much that I could talk about for our segment this week. So last night in the hotel, I watched 47 Meters Down just on my iPad so that I could talk about it. And this is actually a movie that I wanted to see, so it kind of worked out. And I gotta say, it wasn't very good. Now, and I'll get into that more in depth as we go on, but it started out strong because it started out with the Dimension logo. And anytime I see the Dimension logo before a horror movie, I immediately think Scream, or I think Halloween H2O and some of the other Halloween movies were Dimension movies. And despite what people may say about Halloween H2O, I really like that movie. So that kind of set the mood. But then I quickly realized I wasn't in for that kind of film. So this movie is about two sisters. They are played by Mandy Moore, who, of course, is Mandy Moore. She's been around for forever. And Claire Holt, who I was not as familiar with, and I don't know her work as well. So basically, they are on vacation in Mexico, and Mandy Moore's character reveals to her sister a few minutes into the film that her and her boyfriend or fiancé, I can't remember, his name is Stuart, he broke up with her because he said that he was bored with their relationship. So her sister, thinking that, she needed to be a pick-me-up or whatever, takes her out on the town in Mexico, and they go dancing, and they meet a couple guys. And these guys that they meet in Mexico are telling them about their friend that has this boat, and they go, and there's a cage that they go in, and they go into the ocean, and they see sharks. So you're in this cage, and these 25-foot sharks come up to you, and it's like this exhilarating experience, and they talk these girls into doing it the next day. And the girls go, and Mandy Moore is scared, and her sister guilts her into doing it, this cage experience because she says, oh, Stuart broke up with you because he said you're boring and this isn't boring and you could make him jealous and all that kind of shit. And so she reluctantly does it. They go into the cage after the guys do it. And once they're in the cage, the winch breaks and they sink 47 meters down into the ocean, separated from the boat, and are just on their own, basically. They kind of have a little communication with the boat, but they have their scuba gear, and they're running low on oxygen, and there are sharks all around them because they chum the water to get the sharks to come for the whole cage experience. So the rest of the movie kind of just plays with that, plays with the shark aspect, and is basically about them trying to get back to the surface. And I don't know. The one thing that I don't like about trailers, which we do talk about trailers a lot on this podcast, but trailers give away so much about the movie. And a movie like this, I don't know how you couldn't give it away that these girls are going to end up at the bottom of the ocean, but it takes like a half hour to get to that point, and the whole time you know where it's going. You know that these girls are going to get in that cage and it's going to go wrong and they're going to be at the bottom of the ocean and there's going to be sharks everywhere. And it takes a half hour from them to set that up in an hour and a half movie. So that, to me, isn't necessarily the movie's problem. It's more of a promotion problem. But again, I don't know how you promote this movie without saying it. So I don't necessarily know where the fault lies, but I think it takes away from the movie because the whole first 30 minutes of the film, you're thinking, all right, how do we get to the bottom of the ocean? Where are the sharks? That's what I'm waiting for. That's why I saw this. So that part of it is a bit disappointing because you know where it's going. You know what's going to happen. As far as performances go, I do think Mandy Moore is okay. She's not done a lot.
That's surprising.
Yeah,
actually.
yeah. She's not done a lot of work that I like. She's not really in a lot of, the filmographies that we appreciate as nerds, but she carries the movie pretty well. But at the end of the day, it's just not a great shark movie. There are a couple thrills here and there, but overall it was pretty boring and linear. There's only one part in the movie, and it happens in the third act, where it tries to not be a linear story. And they try to throw a twist in there, and I won't spoil it, obviously, but it's a setup that is really foreshadowed with a line of dialogue. As soon as a character says a certain line of dialogue, and if you watch the movie, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. You know that it's going to come into play later in the film. And it does, and this is really a huge letdown. I can't get into it too much because I don't want to spoil it for anybody who wants to see this movie. I don't think it's out on Blu-ray yet, so a lot of people probably haven't seen it if you didn't catch it in theaters, but it is a huge letdown for the audience within the story, in my opinion.
Yeah, this is a movie that I wouldn't say I was necessarily looking forward to by any means because I didn't end up watching it in the theaters, but I really enjoyed The Shallows quite a lot, and I know that this movie is going to get compared to that movie a lot just because they came out relatively at the same time. The Shallows obviously came out last year, and this movie came out this year, but they're very similar concepts, and they're both shark movies, so I was surprised at how much I liked The Shallows, and this obviously reminded me quite a lot of The Shallows, so I was interested in it. I think it got somewhat decent reviews on Rotten Tomatoes. I think it's like hovering around that fresh barrier.
I think it's like at a 59. It's super close.
Yeah, so it's something that kind of intrigued me because I am interested in those types of movies, and I did really like The Shallows quite a lot. So this is a movie that I will eventually check out, but I don't have like super high expectations, especially now that you said that it seemed like it was more middle of the road type of movie.
Yeah, definitely middle of the road is the perfect explanation for it. I would say The Shallows is quite a bit better.
Okay, cool.
So what are you into, dude?
I'm going to talk about a movie that I just saw in theaters not too long ago. I had mentioned, I think a couple of weeks ago, that Despicable Me 3 was going to be what I was into like 2 weeks ago, and then it just it didn't necessarily slip through the cracks because I did just see it, but I got busy with some other things and I didn't get to see it as soon as I wanted to see it. But my wife and I went and saw it the other day. I think we actually saw it on 4th of July, so that was interesting. It's directed by a trio of directors, as animated movies sometimes are. There's usually a couple of different directors on animated movies. Kyle Balda, Pierre Coffin, and Eric Gallion. I doubt I pronounced that last one right.
You really struggle through the pronunciations, man.
Yeah, I know, and I'm trying to get better about it because a lot of times I don't. If they have a hard name, I just don't mention the directors, and I'm trying to get past that and force myself to do it, but I'm really bad, so I apologize for that. For those that aren't familiar with this franchise, it's about Gru shortly after he got fired from the AVL, which is the Anti-Villain League. He teams up with his long-lost twin brother, Drew, who is obsessed with his brother's villain past. So, Tyler, you had mentioned, and I mean, you wrote a review for Minions a few years ago when it first came out, and one of the only reviews you've written for our website, thenerdspodcast.com. And you've brought it up a couple of times since then that you were not a fan of that movie and you kind of trashed it in your review, which I was bummed at the time because I hadn't seen the movie and I am a huge fan of Despicable Me franchise and I was kind of looking forward to Minions, and because of that review I didn't watch the Minions for a long time, and then I finally watched it and I only got like 75% of the way through that movie. Because it is exactly how you described it. It has zero heart whatsoever. Because Gru and the family is really the heart of these movies.
Yeah.
The Minions were just kind of used as comic relief and just for the kids. And I never really got into the Minions. But I did enjoy the franchise as a whole. And so the Minions were really just not good. That movie was really, really bad because it lacked that heart. And I feel like this movie also lacked heart. Even though they did go back to Gru and the family aspect, I just felt like they've milked everything that they can from that concept. So the first movie is about Gru kind of getting to know these girls and kind of basically adopting them and kind of finding his own family after him not really having a family because his mother didn't really care for him that much. So that was an important part of the first movie. And then the second movie is about him and Lucy. So he kind of found a mother for the girls, also a companion as well. So you had that aspect of family. And now he has his long-lost twin. So you'd think that would kind of bode well for the franchise. But it just feels like it's played out at this point. And it's an interesting concept. I really think the Anti-Villain League and the fact that there's this world where villains are actually things, like these super villains or like these Bond villains are actual things that exist in this universe, I think is really interesting. So I would hope that concept would have carried 3 films, but unfortunately it's just super, super played out. The villain in this movie, voiced by Trey Parker, which I was really surprised that he did this film. Not that he's not good at voice acting. I mean, he's made his career on voice acting. He basically does almost all of the voices in South Park. So, I mean, he's obviously talented. He just doesn't do much outside of South Park. And so for him to do this type of movie is kind of surprising. I mean, he didn't really bring a whole lot to the movie, and it wasn't necessarily... I mean, of course, I'm biased because I am a South Park fan. I am a Trey Parker fan. I don't know if it was necessarily his fault because I thought even though the concept of the villain was kind of fun, he just wasn't utilized very often. Like, they didn't really give him... They gave him a decent backstory, but I just don't think they developed him very well. So I was kind of disappointed in that. I thought Steve Carell's performance as Gru and Drew, it was a subtle difference, but I thought it was kind of cool. Because, I mean, he's playing the twin, so you don't want it to be too different, but obviously you want to kind of give them a little bit of a different performance just to kind of... They're 2 different characters, so they have 2 different personalities. So I thought he actually did a pretty good job of giving both of them kind of distinct personalities. I mean, Gru, we've grown to love over the other 2 films, and Drew is a brand new character, so I thought he did a really good job with that. But that's kind of the only good... Well, no, I take that back. I was going to say that was the only good thing that I have to say about this movie, but I did like the fact that kind of what we talked about with Cars 3 and Mater, the Minions definitely took a backseat in this movie. I wonder if it was the backlash from the Minions movie, because you weren't the only ones that you weren't the only one that gave that movie a bad review.
Yeah.
It was kind of critically panned, so I wonder if they kind of had a similar reaction that the Cars franchise did to Cars 2, to the Minions movie, where the Minions definitely took a backseat, and they are almost non-existent in this movie, which was really good. I enjoyed that aspect of the movie, but the story was just really played out.
I'm surprised that they took a backseat, even though the Minions movie didn't get the reviews that the Despicable Me movies got. I mean, they're still super popular, so that surprises me that they're not used that much.
Yeah, I was surprised, but pleasantly surprised, because they irritate the shit out of me.
Yeah, I'll still see this movie at some point, just because at this moment I'm invested. I've seen all of the films, but I didn't rush out to the theater to see it. My wife didn't want to rush out and see it, so it might be something I watch later on down the road. For
sure. As far as a franchise goes, other than the Minions, which I will completely throw out, it's definitely my least favorite by far of the three films, but it's not a bad movie. I know I didn't really do a very good job of highlighting some of the things that I liked about it. It's not a bad movie. It just didn't compare at all, because I really enjoyed the first two movies quite a lot.
All right. Awesome.
So our next segment is just plainly called Comics. Tyler and I read a ton of comics. Not so much this week because we were busy with Indie PopCon, but we do on a normal basis read a ton of comics, and we like to spotlight one or two. So what'd you read this week?
I read Rock Candy Mountain 4.
All right, cool.
Which is a book that I talked about a few issues ago with its number one issue. And I've also talked about some of the author's other work. For those that don't listen all the time or don't remember, this book is written by Kyle Starks, who also wrote a graphic novel called Sex Castle, and he's an Eisner winner. So a really funny book that I'm really enjoying, and I just wanted to bring it back up again. To sum it up, it is basically a book about the world's toughest hobo searching through post-World War II America for the mythological Rock Candy Mountain. And
so pretty much a genre that's been played out.
Pretty tired, but he somehow makes it fresh. So our adventure with this book continues with issue 4 as the two protagonists, Jackson and Slim, are on the course for Rock Candy Mountain. And then Slim, that character, is trying to get back home, which is Lexington, Kentucky. So in the last few issues, since I kind of checked in with this book, they've run into the devil, like the physical devil, like Satan, and it's revealed why Jackson can't lose a fight and why he's so good at fighting. That's because he made a deal with the devil that he can't lose in combat to any one man. And in this issue in particular, they find themselves in jail, and Slim is starting to get fed up with Jackson's antics and is just ready to be home and is done with the hobo lifestyle. So while they're in jail, they come across a hobo-type mob boss character that is pissed at Jackson and who basically has everyone in the jail in his pocket. So all the prisoners, all of the guards, and is, like I said, pissed at Jackson and wants him dead. So after the warden leaves one night, they are planning on killing Jackson and killing Slim, and that's where the fun of this issue starts. So I've talked about Kyle Stark's work a few times, like I mentioned, and the same holds true with this issue of Rock Candy Mountain. So his artwork is really fun. It's not necessarily anything that's super polished. It's very cartoony, but it works for this medium. And I mean, his true talent is definitely within his writing. The dialogue is just so hilarious, and he's so good at Hobo Speak that it's almost scary. Like, I don't know if Hobo Speak is a real thing.
Well, he's from Evansville.
Yeah, he is from where we're from, or where we live, and that does probably add to it, but very, very good at Hobo Speak. And I actually pulled a couple of my favorite lines, just one-liners out of the comic.
Cool.
And I want to read them off really quick because I think that he's so witty and funny. So the first one I pulled out was, "Tighten your butthole, boys. There's about to be an ass whooping." That 100% grade A hobo speak. "Let's go kill us a hobo," which I thought was great. They're talking about the hole in the prison, and they say that it's as tight and cramped as the devil's asshole.
I figured they were going to go with a butthole joke right there.
"If you stay here, you're definitely getting prison murdered," which is good. And that's basically, like, those lines are kind of the tone of the comic. It's telling a story, but it doesn't take itself too incredibly seriously. I mean, at the end of the day, it's about hobos, and, issue 2 was about a hobo fight club, and it's just a lot of fun, and it's really, really funny. And there's a reason that Patton Oswalt got on Twitter after issue 1 and told people to go read this book. Just, he has no affiliation with it. He just really liked it. And he's a really funny guy. So if you don't take my word for it, take Patton Oswalt's word for it and go pick this up, because Kyle Starks is really talented and this book is really funny.
Yeah, don't you have a number 1 of this book signed by Kyle Starks?
Yeah. By the way, thanks for that. Pat, we had that at our local comic book shop, a number 1 signed by Kyle Starks that Pat was gracious enough to buy for me as a gift. So, yes, Pat, I do have that, and it's framed and up on my wall, so thank you.
Cool. Yeah, I just wanted to get a little bit on the podcast.
No, it's one of my cherished possessions, so thank you, Pat.
As any gift from me should be.
Well, it's my only gift, I think, from you, if I'm not mistaken. But anyways.
Except for the gift of friendship. That was real dumb. I apologize.
No, that's a good joke. That's a joke that my parents can listen to. So I'll share that one with them. So.
All right, so I was kind of waiting for you to say what did I read. But
what'd you read this week, dude?
Okay, cool. Yeah. So I read a number 1, Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe Again. This was written by Colin Bunn, who wrote the first Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe, which I didn't read. One main reason I did not read it is, for me, and I think you'll agree with this, Deadpool is kind of hit or miss.
Yes, 100%.
So I actually really like his main title quite a lot. His main book that's going on right now is pretty funny. Not as funny as I think they think it is, but I kind of get that as a flaw for the character in general, because like I said that when we reviewed the Deadpool movie, I don't think that movie is as funny as they think it is. So I think just as a character, the joke density is good, but the hit percentage is not that great. I know that Spider-Man Deadpool was kind of disappointing for me, at least. I gave that, I think, about 10 issues, and I wasn't a huge fan of that book as well. But I definitely put Deadpool Kills the Marvel Universe Again in the latter category as far as it being kind of a disappointment, which is surprising because I really didn't have much expectations going in because I hadn't read the first miniseries of the same name. It was pretty dumb, the story, and surprisingly not funny. Not for a lack of trying. Like I said, the joke density in a Deadpool comic or movie or TV show or whatever that has a character in it is going to be high just because that's what the character is, but the hit percentage was 0% for me in this book. Not a single joke landed for me. The story itself, the reason, because Deadpool he's definitely an anti-hero for sure, but he has that hero part of him. So you can't just have him just kill people for random reasons. Like, there has to be a reason that he does this, and the rationale behind it is literally pulled from Old Man Logan, and I thought it was kind of cheesy in a better comic, Old Man Logan. So when they kind of pulled the same logic in this book, I was just like, I rolled my eyes pretty hard because it was pretty stupid, and it was basically secondhand from Old Man Logan. So yeah, I didn't really like it in that book. I definitely didn't like it in this book. I will say that the artwork, so basically you have what's actually going on in what, I'll put it a different way. There's artwork for what you're supposed to see and what everybody sees, and then there's artwork for what Deadpool actually sees. and Deadpool is a little bit more cartoony. And so I thought that was kind of cool. That switch between the panels were kind of cool and the pages was kind of cool. But that was pretty much all I can say about this book. If you haven't picked it up and you're thinking about it, I would definitely suggest skipping it because it is not worth it at all.
Yeah, this book honestly didn't even blip on my radar. I've just kind of gotten a little tired of Deadpool over the years, if I'm being honest. Like, I still appreciate the character. I'm excited for Deadpool 2. I'm currently reading Punisher versus Deadpool, but at the end of the day, I just think that they've gotten a little too comfortable with the character, and I just wasn't interested.
Yeah, definitely skip it for sure.
All right, you ready for nerd news?
Of course. What do you got this week?
So this was a pretty, I'm trying not to say weak, but that's exactly what it was. So I got a couple stories here, but honestly not much broke. So the first concerns Baby Driver, which I talked about last week for what I was into, and I know you've seen it since. And apparently Sony really wants Edgar Wright to make a sequel, and he is strongly considering it. He said that if he were to make a sequel to any of his movies, it would be Baby Driver. So he is kind of exploring the possibilities of a sequel. So it's not obviously not greenlit or anything, but the possibility is out there for a Baby Driver 2.
That's kind of weird because the way that movie ends, you wouldn't think that there would be room for a sequel unless they do a kind of a prequel route.
Yeah, so I didn't realize this, but apparently the end, and we won't spoil exactly what it entails, but it's left up to interpretation, but I didn't realize that there was any other interpretation to what was shown to us at the end of that movie.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I do too. I guess the end shot, people are saying, was maybe a figment of his imagination.
Well, yeah, because they plant that earlier in the movie.
That never even crossed my mind. And maybe it's because I'm dumb, but I just yep, that's what happens and we're good.
Yeah, so I didn't really get to talk too much about this movie. You mentioned it a couple of weeks ago for what you're into. I have seen it since, like you said, and I really liked it. I think I might have liked it a little bit more than you did because it seemed like you were kind of lukewarm on it.
Not according to our Letterboxd reviews.
What did I give it?
You gave it a 3.5. I gave it a 4.
Oh, I don't remember well, first of all, I don't really check your Letterboxd very often.
Oh, wow. Ouch. You're going to have to get me another signed comic to make up for that burn.
No, I just don't pay too much attention to that. Like, I follow a few people on that site, but I really use that as more of a just kind of me logging my films. So I don't really pay a ton of attention to it. But, yeah, I thought it was really, really funny and really cute at the beginning. I really liked that kind of car chase musical kind of vibe that they were going with, the first act, and then they completely drop it in the second act. I don't know exactly how they could have done it in that musical style when shit hits the fan.
Yeah.
But if you're going to start it in the first act, I feel like you should at least have that constant thing going through the rest of it. The soundtrack did play a part, but it didn't play as big of a part as maybe it did in Guardians or something like that. I felt like they could have emphasized it a little bit more and why he was so obsessed with it. They kind of talk a little bit about it, especially with his mom and what happened with the car crash and all that good stuff. So I think that it was still there, but I think there was definitely some room that they could have developed that a little bit more. Especially, there's a scene towards I think it's middle of the third act, where he's struggling to find a song on the radio station because he doesn't have his iPod or whatever. And I was just fucking drive, man. They don't emphasize that he absolutely has to have it.
Yeah.
They do kind of mention earlier in the movie where he's oh, I got to start over. So they kind of plant that he has that quirk to him, but I don't know. I don't feel like they did a good enough job kind of developing that where he absolutely had to have it to drive.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a really good point. So,
Yeah, but I did enjoy it. Apparently not as much as you did, according to Letterboxd.
All right, so next story. This has been a big story for like 2 weeks now that keeps popping up, and apparently it's confirmed now, and I don't understand why it's that big of a story, but we'll go ahead and cover it really quick. So Samuel L. Jackson is going to be co-starring in Captain Marvel as Nick Fury. It went back and forth a little bit, and then I think Deadline, or I can't remember, somebody confirmed it this week that he's going to be in that film, which to me is like, I mean, makes sense, right?
Yeah, I think it was just a big story because we haven't really seen Nick Fury much.
Yeah.
Since what, I guess...
Age of Ultron.
Yeah.
We haven't seen him since Age of Ultron.
Yes.
Which I think that they're kind of being smart here because everybody's kind of teased that the first part of Infinity War, or, I guess they're not calling it part 1 and part 2 anymore, but Avengers Infinity War, some characters are not going to make it out, and that will be the end of them. So it's probably good to hold on to characters like Nick Fury that have been around since, the beginning, I guess, at this point, and be able to weave him into new characters like Captain Marvel and whoever else they plan on introducing in the next phase to set up future iterations of the Avengers.
Yeah, he's kind of the glue.
Yeah.
There's certain characters throughout the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and he's one of them that kind of pieces all of this stuff together.
Yeah, so, just using him sparingly, I think works out, because if they had used him as much as they're using Robert Downey Jr., they'd probably be paying quite a bit at this point. So I don't know what Samuel L. Jackson's contract looks like, but I'm sure he's a lot cheaper than RDJ is.
For sure.
All right, and last piece of nerd news is a surprise for you, Pat. It is a surprise trailer trash segment, which we have only done like 2 or 3 times. So
I don't think that it's a surprise because I know exactly where you're going.
So obviously we're reviewing Spider-Man Homecoming on this episode, and last night Pat and I went to see it together here in Indianapolis at the Regal Cinema in the Circle Center Mall. And before that movie played, there was an especially awful trailer that I wanted to bring up because you looked at me afterwards and asked if that was a real movie. And unfortunately it is. And it is a trailer for a movie called Geostorm that starred, what's his name? Gerard Butler as, I'm not exactly sure, like an astronaut scientist that controls the weather. I can't even say it without laughing because this movie looks so goddamn ridiculous.
Yeah, it looked like a trailer for a fake movie that you see in a real movie. That the characters are in a movie theater and they're watching the previews, and it looks like a fake, ridiculous trailer for a fake movie.
Whenever I saw it, I was like, how are they taking themselves seriously?
It looked like 2012, basically, except for if we could control the weather.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know how a movie like this gets made. It looks like it's going to lose a lot of money. The effects don't look that amazing on it, but it can't be cheap. With, there's scenes where there's like a bunch of tornadoes, and there's scenes where there's hurricanes and other shit because whatever, the weather's all crazy, and then we stop controlling it and it gets crazier. I don't know. I honestly don't know what was going on in it, but Gerard Butler has fallen hard.
Yeah, after 300, I kind of followed him a little bit closer.
Yeah. He made some bad choices.
Yeah, but looking back, 300 is a really cool movie. But when I first saw it, I was completely blown away, and I've liked it a little bit less. And 100%. I think that has a little to do with the fact that I don't really like Zack Snyder anymore.
Yeah.
So that kind of soured me on that film a little bit. But it's not like before 300 he was making super awesome choices. He just kind of lucked out with 300 being pretty cool.
Yeah, but I feel like he lucked out with 300 being cool, and his star was way up there. And he could have probably done anything, and he made some really terrible decisions as far as the movies he was in after that. He didn't want to be the action star guy, and so he kind of did. I think he did like a movie with Katherine Heigl that was a romantic comedy that was really bad, and by the time he was ready to go say, okay, I'll be the action movie guy, he was doing Olympus Has Fallen and London Has Fallen and now Geostorm, and it's pretty sad.
Yeah, but let's be honest, he's not the best actor either. So
no, he is not.
Yeah.
All right, man. That is all I have for Nerd News.
Okay, so like you said, we are going to review Spider-Man Homecoming. We saw it last night. Spider-Man Homecoming is directed by John Watts, who directed Cop Car, which is a movie that I believe I brought up on a past What I'm Into forever ago. It seems like I really liked that movie quite a lot, but that's basically all he's done. I was actually really surprised when he got Spider-Man Homecoming. But it's about Peter Parker, obviously, following the events of Captain America Civil War, is having a hard time balancing his duties as Spider-Man and his personal life while trying to impress his mentor, Tony Stark. Obviously, we are both really excited about this. I feel like I've kind of waited my entire life for this movie. As cool as the other Spider-Man movies were, just as a comic book nerd, it was cool to see your favorite character on screen. I've been waiting for him to be part of this Marvel Cinematic Universe, and it's funny because I feel like I've been so busy the last couple of weeks that it never really hit me that we were getting it until literally we were sitting in the theaters. I was like, I saw the Marvel Studios logo and I was like, this is really fucking cool. We're in for a really cool movie just because he's finally back where he belongs in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah, and that alone, they could have coasted off of. They could have said, this is going to sell tickets because he's part of this universe now, and it kind of adds this extra layer that those other two Spider-Man film franchises didn't do. But not only did they add him in, and they made a really great movie as well that it sounds like we're gonna get into and kind of agree on.
Yeah, for sure. So if this is your first episode, anytime that we do a review like this, we always start off with a kind of general overview of what we felt about the movie. We call it broad strokes. So how'd you feel about Spider-Man Homecoming?
So I kind of gave it away a little bit there in the intro,
yeah, for sure.
But this movie made me love Spider-Man again. So I've always loved Spider-Man. I've talked about the 90s cartoon a million times and the comics a million times, and I appreciated a few of those other Spider-Man movies a little bit, but over the last few years since Amazing Spider-Man 2, that character just hasn't been at the forefront for me. Like, I'm not caught up on the comic because, it's not bad, but it's just not, it's not Spider-Man to me, and the movies didn't do a whole lot for the character for me, so he's just kind of faded away in a regard, as far as I'm concerned. And this movie kind of made me realize why he was my favorite for so long. And that was done by being charming and being witty and implementing a movie with heart. So all of the attributes of the character are there, and you add him into a cinematic universe that I already care about because there's how many movies at this point? 9, 10, if not more.
There's more.
That are amazing and make me care about all these characters. It just was perfect in that regard. And like I said, it reminded me why Spider-Man used to be my favorite and why that character is so strong.
Yeah, it kind of blows my mind that just in a few years, I'm going to say it got thrown together, but of course there's more to it than that, but it feels like we were just talking about the deal that Sony and Marvel made to kind of come together and bring this Spider-Man to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and the fact that they put this together, and obviously he was in Captain America Civil War, but it feels like this movie was kind of thrown together, and the fact that it felt like this is how they planned it all along, just the way that they fit it into the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but still made it a really street level type of movie. Like, it felt like a Spider-Man story that happened to exist in this other universe. It didn't get bogged down by tying it to the Marvel Cinematic Universe, which I really appreciated. it feels like it was a miracle. Not only that they made it work in such a short time, but they made a great movie in the process.
Awesome. Yeah.
All right, so the next segment is just we break down the story in a little bit more detail. So how'd you feel about the story?
This was basically a John Hughes movie that happened to be in the MCU, which is great and sets a perfect tone for this character, especially since they were hardcore going for the high school vibe. This feels like a high school movie that happens to feature Spider-Man. So Breakfast Club with Spider-Man in a way. And that is so great for this character and something that they kind of sort of tried to do before, but they didn't succeed with. But this movie knocks it out of the park. It has excellent comedy in addition to all of that. And that fits the character so well. And that's something that they, again, half-assed tried to do in former incarnations, but knock out of the park with this. It felt like I was watching the Spider-Man from the comic books or the Spider-Man from the 90s TV show up on the big screen, which was amazing to see. Again, it feels like a true high school movie. There's high school problems. He's juggling being Spider-Man with, his extracurricular activities, or being under his Aunt May's roof, or going to the homecoming dance with the girl he has a crush on. And I don't know. It's like a coming-of-age movie that features Spider-Man, and we've talked about it before. I think we're both suckers for coming-of-age films, so that alone has me invested and interested. So as far as other aspects of the story that I really liked, I'm really happy that they skipped the origin. Of course, they kind of had to do it at this point because he was already introduced in Captain America Civil War, but I think that featuring Uncle Ben too much, even in flashbacks, could have taken this movie to a really repetitive place, and it kind of does better staying lighthearted and not dealing with his death. The only complaint I have is with the Peter Parker-Tony Stark relationship towards the second and third act. It's a little inconsistent in my opinion. It's shown in the trailer that at some point Tony Stark takes the suit away from Peter for kind of going against his word and going out there and doing something a little too big in Tony's mind. And in the third act, whenever an eventual reconciliation comes about, I think that it's a little inconsistent with the prior conversation that the two had, and that kind of left me a little unsettled. But at the end of the day, that's a really minor complaint for a really good movie.
Yes, I really appreciate the point that you made about, well, most of the points that you made, but I really agree with the origin story. We've seen it in 2 different Spider-Man movies, so if you don't know the Spider-Man origin story by now, you're never going to know it. So why continue beating that to death at this point?
Yeah.
I liked that they did kind of reference it a little bit with the Aunt May stuff, but they definitely were not heavy-handed with it at all. They just kind of mentioned it very briefly, and so I definitely appreciated that we didn't have to see Uncle Ben die over and over again, which I think DC should have taken a card from that for sure, like a page from that book for sure, because we do not need to see Thomas Wayne die over and over again. So I definitely agree with that as well. But the big thing for me that you didn't mention is the villain. I kind of want to start my story segment with just talking about the villain, because that is something that we have discussed a lot in the past. That Marvel, one big flaw with a lot of these Marvel Cinematic Universe movies is the fact that you're working to this big bad Thanos, and so all the other villains just seem minor and throwaway. Now in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, I did like that even though it was a one-off villain, it did play a big part with Peter Quill. So I did appreciate that. So, I mean, there are exceptions to the rule, but I thought that Michael Keaton's Vulture was the best villain we've seen in a while in a Marvel Cinematic Universe movie. And I've seen several interviews, and I saw several interviews with Michael Keaton prior to seeing this film, where he kind of said something to the effect that what drew him to this movie was that they were trying to create a different type of villain for this movie, and he never read a script that a villain was like this. And when I hear certain things like that, because I'm so pessimistic, I kind of roll my eyes, because I am a big sports fan, and it kind of felt like a post-game interview with an athlete. Like, oh, well, they say a lot, but they don't actually say anything of substance. And I kind of felt like, what else is Michael Keaton going to say in that situation? If you're asking him about the movie, he's not going to say, oh yeah, it's a super bland villain and the movie sucks. Like, he's going to say good things about the movie, whether or not he actually believes it, because that's his job and he's promoting the film. But after seeing it, I completely agree with him. I thought that the villain was really, really well done in this movie. Some of the best villains are the ones that you can empathize with. And I definitely think that you can empathize with this character. Like, you can understand where he's coming from. He has very well-developed motivations in this movie. And he's not pure evil. Like, you can, like I said, empathize with him. But he definitely has, I wouldn't even say anti-hero, because he's definitely not a hero. But there's definitely points where you feel for that character. And he's just not completely evil in this movie, and so I appreciated that turn. So he's definitely one of the best villains we have seen in a long time in a Marvel Cinematic Universe movie. But a lot of the stuff that you said is good. I will add that I don't necessarily agree with the Tony Stark stuff. I actually appreciated. I did like how it was kind of a self-contained story, like I mentioned in broad strokes. You could actually kind of throw away the Tony Stark stuff and you still have a really solid movie. I appreciate it, not just because it builds the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but because it adds a little bit more motivation and drive to Peter Parker. Like, I mean, I think he would have already been Spider-Man, and he already would have had, well, he already was before he met Tony Stark, but I think that he would already want to help these people no matter what, but the fact that he's trying to prove himself to Tony Stark, I think it adds a layer of motivation to the character. But honestly, if you wanted to, you could cut that stuff out and you'd still have a really, really solid Spider-Man story because of the things that you mentioned. One of the things that I love about Spider-Man and Peter Parker as a character, and I've said this a million times on the podcast, is that he's a vulnerable superhero. I related to him as a kid because he balanced everything that he had to do, like with the schoolwork and his regular work, paying his bills later on in his life, and being Spider-Man, still trying to help people. I thought it was a down-to-earth, vulnerable superhero, and I couldn't relate to the superhero aspect, but I can relate to the person that Peter Parker was. So I really thought that this was far and away the best interpretation of the character so far.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, and I agree with most of what you said about the Vulture. Just, I don't know that I had a hard-on like you did for Michael Keaton. I thought that the villain was more fleshed out than some of the other MCU movies have done, and they've kind of maybe learned from that a little bit, but it doesn't come full circle for me until the end of the movie. Up until the third act, he's kind of a generic villain, in my opinion.
Really? I thought because he kind of got screwed at the beginning of the movie, and the fact that he was just trying to, I don't know if make ends meet is necessarily the right term, because they make it seem like he's making a shit ton of money, and he's obviously doing it illegally, so he is a criminal for sure, but there's a bit of a twist that I don't necessarily think was much of a twist, because I kind of saw it coming. But that being said, there's a moment in the film where it hits you exactly why he's doing it. Yeah,
and that's where it kind of wraps it up for me, and it's kind of, without spoiling too much, it's kind of in the same vein of why Guardians of the Galaxy 2, we kind of, not forgave them, but we kind of accepted the villain a little bit more, because it comes down to family. And I think that that's a good motivation for a villain. And that's kind of what we see in this movie a little bit. But for me, being a blue collar guy who gets screwed out of a contract, which is what happens in the first 5 minutes of the movie with his character, that's not enough to make me care about the villain. So up until later in the movie, I wasn't that enamored.
Yeah, I think I just appreciate the fact that he wasn't completely evil. Like, you could empathize with him a little bit. Maybe you don't buy his motivations early in the movie, but I do appreciate the fact there's a moment between Peter Parker and Michael Keaton's character where they're just kind of talking man to man, and he mentions that basically Peter Parker saved, I don't know what what I can spoil, so I'll leave it there, but basically Peter Parker did him a favor, so he's going to let him go and kind of give him a choice and basically do him a favor in a way to return what Peter Parker did for him. So I thought that made him more of a human character than just this villain.
Yeah. We should probably cut it right there because we're getting close to spoiling stuff, I think.
All right, cool. So moving right along to performances, as you can imagine, I did have a bit of a hard-on for Michael Keaton in this movie. I thought that he was really, really good as the Vulture. Like I said, I appreciate how his character is not completely evil, and I think he plays it pretty well. I think he's kind of menacing towards the end, the third act. I think he plays the kind of the intimidating. Again, I don't want to spoil anything, so I'm going to stop it there. But I think that he plays that part really well. Tom Holland is easily the best Spider-Man, and I say that being somewhat of an Andrew Garfield fan. I don't really like Tobey Maguire that much. Up until this movie, Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man movies were the best, minus Spider-Man 3, so I kind of gave him credit for that. But Tom Holland is definitely the best Spider-Man, and that has a lot to do with the material. I think this is the closest they've gotten to the Peter Parker that I see in the comics. So, yes, he is a very talented actor, but I think a lot of that has to do with the material, which is surprising because there were so many screenwriters on this movie. But, yeah, I think that he was great. There wasn't a whole lot else as far as performances are concerned. Aunt May didn't really play a huge part in this movie. My guess is that she's going to play a pretty big part in Homecoming 2 or whatever they call the second one, the sequel, just because there's a bit of a cliffhanger at the end of this movie. So my guess is that she's going to play a bigger role in the sequel. But I thought Tom Holland was good. Michael Keaton was great. I don't know his name, and I apologize for that, but his friend is pretty good in this. Even though he's just basically the comic relief, I think he does a pretty good job.
Yeah, I don't know his name either, but the character's name is Ned.
Yes.
So I have nothing but positive things to say about the performances as well. Obviously, like you said, hands down, like not even a close race. Tom Holland is the best Spider-Man. Like, just straight off the comic book page almost. It's amazing. Marissa Tomei, you mentioned Aunt May not having a big part, but I still think that she was charming in the scenes that she did have, and she doesn't have a lot to work with, but she's still able to show how much she cares about Peter in the scenes that she did have. So I appreciated that she made the most of what she was given. The supporting cast is great. All of Peter's classmates. I forget the actor's name, but he's from Budapest Hotel, right?
Yes.
Grand Budapest Hotel. He plays Flash Thompson, and he's fantastic as Flash. He's kind of the comic relief alongside Ned as well, being just there for laughs at that point. But he's great. All of Peter's other classmates are great. I also liked that they got amazing actors to play bit parts. So Donald Glover, Martin Starr, and Hannibal Buress all have very few lines and very few scenes in the movie, but they all do a great job with what they're given, especially, I will say, Hannibal Buress.
Yeah, he was hilarious.
He's hilarious, and I think he probably has 3 or 4 lines in the entire movie.
Yeah.
But he just kills it with those 3 or 4 lines, and every single one of them is almost a joke that hits. And then, of course, I have to bring up really quick Jon Favreau and Robert Downey Jr. Obviously, they are, at this point, 9 years seasoned in their roles as Happy Hogan and Iron Man, but they still bring the charisma. They don't phone it in, and they still do a great job.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So our last segment with these movie reviews is just breaking down the action. I will say that I was a little bit disappointed in the lack of the spider sense. That was a little disappointing. I know I've seen a few articles here and there that they're going to bring it in the sequel, blah, blah, blah. They're kind of going back and forth about whether or not he's going to have his spider sense. But yeah, that was a little bit disappointing, but I thought the action scenes were well choreographed. I liked the fairy. I thought that was a pretty cool scene. I liked his interactions with his suit when he did have the high-tech suit. I thought that was pretty cool. Just the way that they kind of brought the comedic, I don't want to say relief, but I like the fact that he wasn't awesome at being Spider-Man throughout this movie. I thought that was pretty cool. And it definitely plays a role in some of these action scenes that he's not used to being Spider-Man quite yet. So I definitely liked that quite a lot. Yeah, I just thought the action was really well done.
I thought the action was good, but, and this might be a little controversial for you, but I don't think it's the best action we've seen in a Spider-Man movie. And that kind of makes sense because the kid in this movie is still learning, still figuring out the suit he just literally got from Tony Stark and still trying to find his way as Spider-Man. But this movie wasn't focused on the action. It was focused on the character and the humor, and I appreciate that, so I'm not faulting it for not having amazing action. But just like, I mean, in my opinion, it wasn't the best Spider-Man action we've seen. It's not the standout of the movie, and that makes sense. So I forgive it for that. We talk a lot about the third act in superhero movies, being, punch fests, especially in DC movies. And this movie isn't that by any means, but I do think the action of the third act between Spider-Man and the Vulture was pretty weak.
Really? I thought the airplane stuff was pretty cool.
I thought it was kind of boring, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah, and again, all of the positive things that I enjoyed about this movie outweigh the disappointment I had for the action because, again, he's still finding his way, but I enjoyed his action in Civil War more than the action pieces in this movie.
Okay. All right, so that's pretty much it for Spider-Man Homecoming. As always, we're going to give it a star rating out of 5 stars. So what do you think of Spider-Man Homecoming?
I am going to give it 4 out of 5.
I'm going to give it 4 as well. Like I said, I really, really enjoyed this movie. I was kind of going back and forth between 4 and 4.5, but there were a few nitpick things here and there that I didn't quite like as much as I wanted to. So 4 stars it is. So our last segment every episode is just what we call Nerd Favorite. Tyler and I take turns. Each week the topic changes from episode to episode. We will ask what your favorite blank is, whatever the topic is this week, because we just talked about Spider-Man. We talked about favorite villains. I think we did a top 5 list of that really, really early on in the podcast, so definitely don't listen to that. But I thought it would be kind of cool to talk about what our favorite Spider-Man film villain has been. So for me, there's 3 obvious answers. Willem Dafoe as Green Goblin, Alfred Molina as Doc Ock, and of course Jamie Foxx as Electro. That last one was a joke and you didn't laugh at it. No, he was garbage in that movie. The third one, of course, is Michael Keaton as the Vulture. And I know it's going to sound knee-jerk on my part because we just talked about it, but I think my favorite Spider-Man film villain is Michael Keaton as the Vulture for basically all the reasons that I just listed before. The fact that he's not completely evil. I think his performance is outstanding. I like that you can just emphasize with the character a little bit. He certainly is a criminal and he certainly is evil, but he's not just completely evil, and you can emphasize with the character, and is played really, really well by Michael Keaton.
Yeah, man, you stole my joke. I was going to say, Paul Giamatti is the Rhino, but
I almost went Paul Giamatti, actually.
Yeah, that movie's bad. But I guess I would say, I don't even know that I would say Michael Keaton if I was the first person to go. I think that Doc Ock still holds a special place for me. I really love Spider-Man 2. Well,
that was the best Spider-Man movie until this movie, in my opinion.
Yeah, 100%. And I don't know that I don't revisit that movie enough, and maybe it's because Spider-Man 3 kind of soured that whole trilogy for me. But Doc Ock in that movie was done really well. Him being kind of a heartwarming character with a wife that he loves, and this mentor type character to Peter Parker, and then he basically has his, mad scientist experiment go wrong, and that changes him into this villain, and he's trying to do the right thing even though his vision is skewed as to what the right thing actually is. And the end sequence between him and Spider-Man on that train is, in my opinion, the best Spider-Man action that we've seen on film yet. So I would have to definitely give it to Doc Ock, but I hope that they eventually do that character again, do it better, and just keep growing on the amazing movie that Homecoming is, and keep giving us really strong portrayals of Spider-Man villains, because the Spider-Man villains are definitely almost as strong as the Batman Rogues Gallery. So they have a lot to choose from and a lot to play on. So I hope that we continue to see great incarnations over these next few Marvel Cinematic Universe Spider-Man movies.
For sure. Doc Ock is, again, one of the 3 obvious choices for me, so I don't fault you for picking him for sure. I will say that I don't know if they'd ever redo that villain, because I think that they're so afraid of being kind of grouped in with those films. Not that they're bad films, other than the third one. They're not bad films to be grouped in with. I just think that they're so afraid of rehashing those villains that they kind of keep wanting to use new ones.
I will say Kevin Feige just did an interview where he said they're basically not going to do any of the villains that we've seen before again. So that kind of limits the Rogues Gallery down for the next standalone Spider-Man film to who the villain might be.
Yeah, that's disappointing, because, like I said, it's not surprising, but it's disappointing just because as many good villains as he has, they've already done so many movies. So At a certain point, I do think that he has great villains, but you're not going to do the Jackal because everybody fucking hated that, other than me, basically. So they're not going to do that villain. So, what else do you have?
I keep wanting Kraven, of course.
Well, yeah, of course. That's the obvious one.
But I had read that Kraven might be the villain in Venom, but then they reported that it would be Carnage, which is more obvious. So who fucking knows, man? I think they're still trying to figure it out.
I heard that Kraven might get his own solo.
Fuck that. Jesus Christ.
All right.
Nobody, he's as strong as a villain that Kraven is. I don't want to see a Joker movie. You have to have Spider-Man. So hopefully that's the route they go.
For sure. All right. So that is the end of that episode of the Nerd You're Looking For podcast. As always, we'd appreciate if you subscribe, rate, and review us on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, basically any good podcatcher you use, we're on it. You can also check out our website, thenerdspodcast.com, where I write a weekly blog series, just kind of whatever I want to talk about. I'll post that just sometime during the week. It's not like I have a set day for it. You can also check out all of our reviews, all of our episodes. You can also check out our Rotten Tomatoes scorecard on our website, thenerdspodcast.com. Also, comment and subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Nerds You're Looking For. Check out our Twitch channel, which Tyler does a weekly stream Monday at 9 p.m. Central, which is currently on hiatus because he's been crazy with his work schedule recently. But I also do a weekly stream Wednesday at 7 p.m. Central. You can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram. They're both at The Nerds Podcast. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Google+. You can also email us at thenerdsyou'relooking4@gmail.com. And vote for us for Podcast of the Month at podcastland.com. For Patrick Kuhn,
Tyler Hunt,
we are The Nerds You're Looking For. Take it easy, guys.
Later, guys.